gradient meant to draw your eye upward. Those tiles are so delicate, they're almost like porcelain, and they have to be hand washed twice a year to maintain their brilliant, vibrant white color. And the Wrigley Building is designed in the Spanish Revivalist style of architecture. So it was designed at a time in our nation's history where we didn't exactly have our own unique architectural style yet. We were doing a lot of borrowing from abroad. So that bell tower is modeled after the La Giralda bell tower in Sevilla, Spain, a clear illustration of that Spanish Revivalist architecture there. And immediately to our right is the Tribune Tower, that is French Gothic Revivalist. I just like to point both of these out because they're great examples from this time period in the early 1920s where we were borrowing from Europe specifically. We'll talk about Tribune Tower a little bit more on our way back. This bridge we're going under is the Michigan Avenue, recently renamed DuSable Bridge. It was the first double-decker bridge in the country. Just recently celebrated its 103rd birthday this March. Kind of a big deal for this bridge. After we pass under it, straight ahead of us, we will see Trump International Hotel and Tower, which was completed in 2009 and designed by an architect named Adrian Smith, who got his start at the Chicago-based firm of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. And Smith is sometimes referred to as the world's tallest architect. The more medium-sized king comes in at 5'7". He has designed some of the tallest buildings of the world, including the world's current tallest building, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So this building is a great example of this architectural style that became popular in the 1980s called contextualism. So the building draws on the context of its surroundings to create something site-specific. It is that the building is in conversation with its surroundings. So you'll notice 3 patios or setbacks on Trump Tower. Each of those corresponds to the height of one of the tower's iconic neighboring buildings. So the first one matches the height of the Wrigley Building we just passed. The second patio matches the height of the Jewelers Building, which is that limestone building over on our left with the one big dome on top. And the third and highest patio matches the height of this sleek black building just next door, which is called AMA Plaza. So AMA Plaza here was the last building designed by renowned German architect Mies van der Rohe before his death in 1969, and it embodies a style of modernism that we like to call black box modernism. I know, really inventive with the name there. But later on in the tour, we'll be seeing several more of these black box modernist buildings that were made popular by Van der Rohe. He believed that the beauty in a design lay in its mathematical precision rather than any sort of decorative stone cladding or the like on the exterior. Next up on our right are Chicago's famous corn cobs. They are officially called Marina City. They're some of the most photographed buildings in Chicago, and they were designed by an architect named Bertrand Goldberg, who was actually a student of Mies van der Rohe, or Black Box Modern Scott. And when these towers opened in 1968, they included a movie theater, bowling alley, ice skating rink, office spaces, grocery stores, restaurants, fitness space, marina space. They were also the first post-war high-rise residential complex in the entire United States. So though this area was still heavily industrial, people began acclimating to the idea of living together in higher density concentrations, partly due to the ease of access to amenities like those offered at Marina City. Now, the architect, Bertrand Goldberg, believed that architecture should reflect shapes found in nature, and he compared the layout of his design to a sunflower. So the center, the core, has the elevator, mechanical, electrical equipment, and then the petals are the apartments. That striped building in the back there between the two towers used to be the movie theater attached to Marina City, but it is now one of my favorite live music venues here in Chicago called the House of Blues, which you can find right there on Dearborn. And while I have you looking up, you'll notice Marina City features completely exposed concrete, which is a feature of a type of modernism known as brutalism. So if we look across the river, 55 West Wacker there is another great example of this style of architecture. So brutalism emphasizes minimalist construction that features bare building materials and structural elements over decorative design. So I like to think 55 West Wacker looks a little bit like a pound sign, but we also affectionately refer to him as the Danny DeVito of our tour. And next to Mr. DeVito is a supermodel of sorts in 77 West Wacker. This is the only building on our tour route designed by an international architect, Ricardo Bofill of Spain. And so those classic Greek-style pediments atop in combination with this modern glass exterior relegates this building to the neoclassical style of architecture, which combines classical architectural elements with more modern materials. Just next door, this blue glass building with the 3 indented columned balconies is 111 West Wacker, and the design for this building was retrofitted for a project that was abandoned in 2008. So it had an existing 26 floors with stone removed, replaced with glass, along with the addition of 34 more floors. And this is now a residential building with apartments renting for between $2,300 and $15,000 a month. Also to our left, Chicago's relatively new but wildly popular Riverwalk, completed in 2016. It features distinct sections between each bridge, each with its own unique personality and function. So cafes, murals, fishing, and ample public relaxation space has transformed our once disgusting industrial riverfront into a gem for visitors and residents alike. I'm going to use this next building coming up on our left here to illustrate something that will become pretty clear to you all by the end of today's tour, and that is that Chicago goes to great lengths to maintain and preserve its history through its architecture. So this building coming up on our left is called the Builders Building. It was originally built to house construction company offices. And once we pop under this bridge, you'll notice a vertical stripe of black windows down the front of the building towards the right. So the section to the left of that stripe was completed in 1927. The section to the right, 1987. So 60 years difference between those two parts. And you can tell that the architect of that newer addition respected the original intentions of that first architect. You know, it's a little bit updated, a bit more modern, but for the most part, we're getting the same basic design and style there. Moving over to our right, we'll get a better view after we get under this bridge, but this huge limestone building is Chicago's famous Merchandise Mart. And the Merchandise Mart was the largest building on Earth when it was completed in 1930. Today, it stands as an excellent example of the Art Deco style of architecture that dominated the 1920s. So, we've got the limestone exterior, soaring vertical lines, deep inset windows, decorative stamped panels with little gold embellishments. These are all predominant Art Deco features. So advancements in technology led to the machine precision that enabled the sort of uniform, intricate designs we see in the Art Deco style. Now, this building was commissioned by Marshall Field of Marshall Field and Company to serve as warehouse and trade show space, and he is now honored among the other merchant princes of Chicago with their bronze busts lining the river. So men like F.W. Woolworth and Montgomery Ward, who made their living in business pursuits, now immortalized in a spot where pigeons and seagulls come to do their business. Okay, that was a good reaction. That joke gets mixed reviews, so this is adding to my data collection. Thank you all. Now we're coming into the confluence of the river's branches here, which is known as Wolf Point. And this area was the birthplace of Chicago in the late 1770s, which is a few homesteads, trading posts, and taverns here. So the etymology of Wolf Point is not known for certain, but one theory is that it was named for a Potawatomi Indian living here at the time named Moaway, which translates to wolf. But lately, Wolf Point here has been a burgeoning space for development with 6 new buildings in the last 8 years, one of which is coming up straight in front of us. This blue glass Hot Pocket Jeep building straight ahead is River Point, completed in 2017. And the arch you can see at the bottom of the building there is part of its structural integrity. So since this building was built above existing railways, this is the design that engineers and architects came up with to support the building while adhering to those constraints below. If you look at that white plaza underneath, those circular cutouts are actually exhaust fans from the Metra and Amtrak passenger trains that run underneath the building. And that red spiraling sculpture out front is called Constellation, and it is the only work we have by esteemed artist and architect Santiago Calatrava here in Chicago, although that was not the intention. It was originally hired to design a massive skyscraper near New York Pier that would have been the new tallest in the Western Hemisphere at over 2,000 feet tall. But unfortunately, the financial crisis of 2008 killed that project. The spot is now home to a literal giant hole in the ground. Though Apple and Google Maps still lists it as the Chicago Spire, pro tip you guys, you do not need to prioritize this in your Chicagoland itinerary. Thank goodness you have me to keep you abreast of such changes. Alright, so now we are headed on to the north branch of the river. The first building I'm going to talk about is this pink brick colored building coming up on the left. So this is the oldest building on our tour route. Fulton House was completed in 1898 and originally served as a massive icebox for cuts of meat from Union stockyards before being shipped across the country in refrigerated train cars. So from the Civil War to the 1920s, Chicago slaughtered and exported more pork and beef than any other city in America, easily making it the headquarters of the industry. But with the closure of the Union Stockyards in 1971, Fulton House here was sold and converted to a residential complex, spearheaded by architect Harry Weiss of Evanston, Illinois. And the changeover from colossal refrigerator to apartments was indeed a challenging one. It took this building 3 months just to thaw, and then when workers began cutting through the walls to create windows, they encountered 4 feet of matted horsehair and cork used as insulation for nearly a century. Yeah. Just next door are the unique postmodern river cottages. They were also designed by Harry Weese. And so Harry Weese was an avid sailor and wanted to evoke a nautical theme in the design of his cottages. And so there are 4 distinct cottages here, and they all pre-sold when they were completed in 1988. And so the public wasn't able to see the interior of these cottages until one went on the market in 2015. We were able to see then that he carried that nautical theme throughout the inside of the cottages as well. So the interiors imitate the cabin of a boat, complete with portholes and all. And these are some of my favorite structures on the river because there's nothing else quite like these river cottages on our Chicago riverfront. And the people who live in them are very nice. I mean, they get hundreds of boats passing by them every day, and they are always chipper and happy to see us and wave. So fingers crossed we're there on the river. Now, coming up on our right is perhaps the most elite fitness center in Chicago. It's called the East Bank Club, and it's got its back facing the river. So it was completed in 1980 and serves as a reminder that the river was not always embraced as the amenity that it is, due to how disgusting and polluted the river was at that time. But you can imagine if this property was being developed nowadays, they would definitely want to take more advantage of this waterfront space. It is here that I'm going to give you a little reprieve from my voice, as well as our neighbors while we have the speakers in front of their houses. Now's a great time to visit the bar, visit the restrooms, or just enjoy the beautiful night that you've chosen to come on a boat ride. I'll be back with you guys in like 2 or 3 minutes once I turn this thing around. Thanks.
Ngon.
नहीं अभी पीना नहीं पीना वेगस जाके सिर्फ हिस्सा कराना अभी नहीं करना हाई उठे वाजी सनी हो रही है उसे मजा ले ओए मुनीब भाई बचा कर रखना मोबाइल
Pertinent to your ticket today, architecture. I encourage you all to look up and notice the beauty of the built environment around us as I chronicle its journey to the present. So we're going to start getting right into things, talking about this white building on our right with that prominent clock tower on top, always keeping us right on schedule. The roots of those water plants grow down, thereby creating many habitats for native species of fish. So fish seek out shallow, rocky areas to mature and spawn, which we largely removed when we dredged the river in the 1800s. You know, the city's quick population and industry growth, the river was in rough shape. But we have seen improvements since the 1950s, but dramatic ones since the passage of the Clean Water Act of 1972. So, since interventions stemming from the Clean Water Act of 1972, we have seen a comeback in biodiversity. 1979, there were just 10 species of fish in this river, and we are now up to, pause for dramatic effect, 76. It's pretty good, right? That's a good guess, though. So yeah, that's my proof that legislation can indeed work sometimes. Now, over on our right, this building that sort of looks like a chair is the LaSalle Wacker building. It's a great example of this early zoning ordinance that limits the floor area of a building above a certain height. So if you see buildings around Chicago with wider bases and skinnier tops, that early zoning ordinance is probably the reason why. Now, this bridge we're about to go under, the LaSalle Street Bridge, was widened in 1930 according to what else but Burnham's plan. And this red brick building on our left previously had 6 symmetrical window bays on either side until they had to sacrifice one on the left for the widening of the LaSalle Street Bridge, so that lack of symmetry bothers some of us just a little bit. But we let that go because this is the only building on our tour route designed close to the prairie style of local architect Frank Lloyd Wright. So Frank Lloyd Wright's home, as well as several he designed nearby, are on display by but I want to tell you about a very cool project that we are seeing now that they've been involved with since 2018 called Art on the Mart. So the folks at the Merchandise Mart have partnered with the City of Chicago to provide free public access to contemporary art. So every night at 7:30, they just changed the time from 9 p.m. to 7:30. Artwork is projected onto the 2.5-acre facade of the Merchandise Mart, and they rotate through different artists and different features, but backed by popular demand. They will continue to feature work from local Chicago public school seniors, which I think is really cool of them. Yeah. Also, I love talking about it when it's actively going off. This has not really happened yet, you guys, so you're part of an inaugural trip. Now, when we pass under this bridge, you'll see the projector box on the wall of the Riverwalk, and it has 34 projectors totaling over $8 million that use mapping software to map the face of this building and then mask out the windows. So they're only projecting on the actual facade and not into the building, into the windows, so they're not disturbing anyone inside. Culture plus 10. The Bank of America building was completed in 2020 after 3 years and $800 million, and it uses these giant tripod legs to vault the third floor up, so best making use of that space while adhering to the 30-foot setback rule we mentioned earlier. Also, sort of more like eye level here on either side of this cafe by the river, you'll see some wavy aluminum panels. And those are actually remnants of the building that used to occupy this site's lot. So another iteration of Chicago integrating a site's architectural history into its design there. All right, guys, we're going to use this next little stretch of our tour to illustrate the evolution of American architecture throughout the 20th century. So we'll begin with the opulence and optimism of the 1920s, journey through the transition to modernist designs of the 50s and 60s, all the way to the postmodern era introduced in the 70s. So coming up on our right, we have another colossal limestone building, classically Art Deco, inset windows, soaring vertical lines, limestone exterior. This was originally the Chicago Daily News building. It opened in 1929, and it was the first building in the United States to include an open-air public plaza like this in its design. It was also the first building in Chicago that was intentionally designed to face the river, which in 1929 was way ahead of its time. The river was 160 feet below grade. Now, another consideration when designing skyscrapers is wind force, wind loading, but primarily used to deal with this building sway. So the first is called inertial slosh dampers. So at the top of this building, there are 12